This module is where we start using the Unix shell for the first time. The very first thing we're going to have to deal with is the process of logging in. This is because virtually every Unix system in the world requires users to log in and be run. The process of logging in is the process of identifying yourself to the Unix computer by providing a username and often a password. So when you sit down at a Unix terminal or X-terminal or workstation, you will usually be presented with a login prompt. At this point you're supposed to type in your username, and then you'll probably be presented with a password, although not always. If you type in the successful password, at that point one of two things will happen. If you're using a graphical user interface, it will simply start that graphical user interface, and you'll be sitting there with a series of icons and some things to click on. One of those icons may represent the Unix shell, so double-clicking on it will hopefully bring up a command line text-based shell window. However, if you're not using a GUI, graphical user interface, then as soon as you've typed in your password, the system will automatically start a shell for you, and you'll be presented with a shell prompt, which we'll see in a second, like that dollar prompt that we saw a little earlier. So let's first look at the case where we are not using a GUI. So we'll now have a little walk through example of the situation where as soon as you are logged in, Unix automatically starts a shell for you. Let's do that now. For virtually the remainder of this course, I'm going to be demonstrating the Unix shell for you, and I'll be doing that by logging in remotely across the internet to my internet service provider, which is Zip in Australia. Now I'm in Australia too, so that's actually not very far away, and I'm going to demonstrate all of the commands in this course by using a particular telnet session to my Zip internet service provider. I'll just mention a few things about that before I start. The first is my internet service provider is using Linux, so I will be demonstrating the Linux version of all the commands that you see. Secondly, the shell that I am automatically assigned when I log in is the bash, the born again shell, which is probably the most user-friendly of the Unix shells. So this doesn't mean very much to you as the audience, because I will not be demonstrating any bash specific functionality. I want the features that I describe in this course to be available to everybody using a born compatible shell. Thirdly, if you're concerned about the speed, in other words, you might be thinking, oh, well, that's going to be very slow if he's sitting there typing things across the internet. We might have to wait ages for the results to come back. It's going to be a very time-consuming process. The answer is you don't have to worry about that. I'm using a blisteringly fast cable connection, and typing the commands into the telnet session into Zip's Linux system using the bash shell will be just about as fast as if I typed them into a command line on my own system. Incidentally, I'm going to use the CRT telnet program, which is the finest telnet program that I've found available on the market today, to get into and use my shell account at Zip. Anyway, if you have access to a Unix terminal, now would be a good time to log in and start practicing some of the things that I show you. Incidentally, at the end of this course we'll look at how to choose which shell is automatically started for you by your Unix system. Okay, I'm now going to start up my telnet session and log in to Zip. Let's do that now. Okay, here's my desktop. I've created an icon here on my desktop which allows me to connect directly to Zip. So I'll on that icon, and here is my login prompt into the Zip World system. So I type in my username, which is mvirtue, and I type in my password, which I'm certainly not going to tell you, and I'm logged in. I have the Zip message of the day, which is all of this stuff. I have a little message saying that my that I have some mail and that my terminal type is ANSI, and you don't need to worry about what that means just for the moment. And this, all across the bottom here, is my prompt. It's quite a long prompt. It's telling me who I'm logged in as and what machine I'm logged into. It's also telling me what my current directory is. If you don't know what any of that means, it doesn't matter, you will soon. So now I can type in various commands like cd, and I can type in ls, and so on. And every time I do, as soon as that particular command has finished, I'm presented with another dollar prompt. Okay, well that's the end of my demonstration on logging in. I'll now show you how it looks if you go the other way. If you have a graphical user interface system, I'll show you how to if you've logged in and found yourself presented with all your icons. Okay, here I am on my desktop, and I've just changed this slightly. This is a new icon that I didn't have there just a moment ago. I'm going to ask you to pretend that you're not looking at a Windows system. I'm going to ask you to pretend that you're looking at a Unix system. I'm going to ask you to pretend this because I don't have a Unix system in order to demonstrate this on. But if I was logged in, if I had just logged in to a Unix system that has a icon-based graphical user interface, then it might look something like this, in the sense that it would have a collection of icons and I'd have a mouse that I could move around. And what I would probably find somewhere on that desktop of that Unix graphical user interface is an icon that has something to do with a shell, perhaps a corn shell or a Bourne shell or a C shell or something like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this and it will actually start a Unix shell. That is because I have actually got on my system a Windows-based Unix shell. Now that might be entirely confusing to you, but it is possible to get a corn shell that will run on a Windows system. And this is what I have. I'm now going to start it for you. So this is what you'll do. You typically just start that up and you'd get a little dollar prompt up there saying, okay, I'm ready to go. And you can do an ls and you can do a cd and so on. And then if you want to, you can create another one. And then you can do another ls and another cd and so on. And you could keep creating those shells, one for each session of things that you wanted to do. So if you do have the benefit of a graphical user interface system, it's quite advantageous to you because it allows you to create several simultaneously running shells. Whereas if you're using a standard text-based dumb terminal, you can probably only pull up one shell at a time. Anyway, I showed you that little demonstration because I wanted you to see the difference between using a single login, automatically started shell, dumb terminal-based Unix experience and a graphical user interface, multi-shell available in a window Unix experience, if that makes any sense. Back to the course, a couple of notes about all that. Your username and password will have been created for you by the system administrator. They should have given you your username and password. And there is a one special user on the system, or one special username I should say, known as root, that has full system privileges. This is the system administrator, or the super user. And if you know the super user password, in other words, you know the root password, it's always called root, and it's just important that the system administrator doesn't give away the root password to just anyone. But if you happen to know the root password, it means that when you log in using the root username, you are never denied access to any resource. In other words, you can run any program and it will never say to you, permission denied. Okay, now that we know how to log in, we know all the nuances and varieties of logging in, let's examine some of the basic commands that you can use with your shell prompt.